tweet. Love to hear the robin go tweet, tweet, tweet. Rockin' Robin, tweet, tweet, rockin' Robin, tweet, tweet. Blow rockin' Robin, 'cause we really gonna rock tonight.
Welcome to Life is Good. I'm Heather McEwen, your ever-loving hostess, and I'm going back in my history with this interview. You will enjoy this young man, and then we'll go back into his father's history, and then we'll talk about the present. And we might throw a little bit of present day in that anyway, but I'd like you to meet somebody I met when I was in 10th grade. His name is Eric Graves. And hello, Eric. I have really
Good morning.
I admired you so much when you were hanging out with us for a little while. You were going out with Debbie Leary, who was swimming with me and my brother,
Yeah,
and you were
yeah,
Mr. Football. And you'd come to
yeah.
the. We had dances after we had parties after swim practice on Friday night. We had parties on Saturday night after swimming all day, and there you showed up, and you weren't a swimmer. You were a football player, and
I'm not a swimmer. This
no,
line right here is my watermark.
you're down a court.
I don't float.
Anyway, my father used to say, "Well, you're full of doo doo and you're down a quart." That
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
but when we were growing up, we grew up on the South Shore because we
Hmm.
all hated the Champlain Bridge and didn't want to go downtown, as our parents didn't want us to. Um,
No.
and you used to say at every soiree, I would hear you announce, "I'm going to be an engineer," and you meant it. And
Yeah.
so how we rekindled this relationship because we haven't even talked to each other in 60 years or something like that.
That's
Um,
the issue.
yeah.
Yeah.
You commented on a Facebook post I had, and I said, "Are you the Eric Graves who used to go out with Debbie Leary and you wanted to be an engineer? Were you? Did you,
Mhm.
you know, Debbie married somebody else, but did you become an engineer?" And now you can talk to. What did you do? The first jobs you had as an engineer at CAE.
Oh. Well, the first of all, in terms of getting into a particular school, the one thing that I've always been really good at is numbers, and so thankfully, I went to electrical engineering at Loyola,
Hmm.
and it was 5 years. We had 2 years CJEP and then 3 years specialized.
I got to skip
And
CJEP because I took grade 12.
ah,
And that
oh,
was only there were only two grade 12s offered in Quebec that year, and I took them
oh,
and I didn't have to go to CJEP. It was 2 years in one. So
oh, wow.
I was always very
Yeah.
immature. So I was always a year behind everybody because I skipped that. Anyway, continue. Sorry about that. Off to Loyola to become an
Anyways,
engineer.
it was 5 years. I lived in Greenfield Park, and for 5 years, I took a 3 hour commute, an hour and a half each way to Loyola to go to school.
How did you were you
And
on Chambly Shambles or how did you get there?
I well, let's see, I'd take Chambly Transport,
That's we called it
the
Chambly
old
Shambles.
carbon monoxide full buses, to
with
the
with seats that were vinyl that were ripped, so you had to be careful
yeah,
that you didn't tear a hole in your leg.
yeah.
I know.
But in the winter, it was really good to sit on the very back bench because that's where most of the heat was, including some of the most of the exhaust. So you take Chambly Transport to Longueuil Metro Station, and go from Longueuil Metro Station to
Barry de
what was it?
Montigny.
What's Barry
Barry.
de Montigny, then all the
Barry de
way out to
Montigny.
Atwater. Yeah, and then go all the way down to the Atwater Metro Station, then hop off and get on 105 all the way out to Loyola, out in Montreal West.
Yeah.
And then when classes were over, do the same thing backwards. you know.
Yeah, so you didn't have your own
So,
vehicle.
oh no, no. The first time I had my own car was when I bought one when I graduated, and it was right around the time when I met Teves, my wife, and
Kathy
I thought
Boissonneau.
she'd be really impressed with an orange Super Beetle.
Well,
She wasn't impressed. And I'm
well, at
nearly
least
froze to death, and as you know, yeah, anyways, super beetles in winter in Canada don't go together. Yeah, so 5 years electrical engineering, I enjoyed it thoroughly, worked my hiney off, um, especially in the last couple of years. I think it was the fourth of the fifth years. It was a year from hell. I remember getting about 4 or 5 hours sleep a night. Had so many courses and everything. And what was interesting, we ended up in a group meeting where all the classmates were saying, "Oh, no, this is too much work, too much work, too much work." Says we got to go to the dean and tell him to cut our load. And I said, well, you know what? We just wasted 20 minutes talking about cutting our load. We could have used that to study. I said, I'm not going. You can go if you want. So, anyways, we didn't go, and everybody managed.
I'm going to interrupt you here for a second to say something about what we learned growing up where we did. Our fathers worked hard. Our
Yeah,
fathers, if your father was like my father and they were both former military, you know that if you did not pick up after yourself, if you do not do the dishes after supper, you're going to get in trouble. If you get in trouble at
yeah,
school, you're going to get in twice as much trouble at home. We were
yeah.
afraid not to work. We were afraid not to do everything we were told.
Well, my father was a real. He was my guiding light. He,
When, yeah.
um, he won. I made a decision about going into engineering, but after he, he just had a general sense of the market. And he suggested an industry that I would eventually go into shortly down the road when I started my career, which is telecom. And I don't know if you remember those commercials. The
With
scene is a restaurant where everyone's talking and there's clinking, clacking, everyone jazzing. And then all of a sudden, the whole restaurant goes quiet and they say, when E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody listens.
everybody listens. That was
Do
your
you remember
father?
that
Of
commercial?
course I do.
No, that was an E.F. Hutton commercial. And every time I think of my dad, I think of that, or every time I think of that commercial, I think of my dad. Because he didn't say much, but when he did say something, better listen.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we were raised the way we were, and we did respect our elders. We never knew
Yeah,
we never our teachers were Miss, Sir, Ma'am, but we never
yeah,
considered calling them by their first name. But
no,
I
no,
we're going to get back to your engineering on your first when you worked for Canadian Aeronautical Engineering on Côte de
yeah,
Liesse. Um,
yeah. Canadian Aviation Electronics, yeah, and
oh,
they're still
how
there,
close?
and they're
Oh,
still flourishing.
my father's
Um,
business was on Côte de Liesse too. Yeah.
besides, I worked on a project called MAD System, Magnetic Anomaly Detection, which was airborne submarine detection system. But they also made flight simulators to train pilots, and they would make custom flight simulators like for the German military, uh, and made them for aircraft as well as helicopters. Really, really sophisticated stuff. And they've since adventured into healthcare. So I think there's a CAE healthcare organization which I think launched an initiative here in the U.S. Couple of years ago. I'm not sure how far they've gone, but I see their name pop up every once in a while. So
Well,
they've
what you
been,
did for CAE was very fascinating. And for anybody who's listening, Eric and I are transplants. We're both living in the States. We're both Canadian. And that's why we're going to be getting into another subject later. But when you came down to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, just to do that flyover, uh,
yeah.
there was
Well,
north and
yeah.
south magnetism and a submarine. You were hunting submarines for
So
God knows why.
I'll explain it a little bit.
Was it submarine season or something? I'm gonna go down and hunt a few submarines. But I'm gonna have a
No,
tree stand and get myself a submarine.
we were vying for a contract with the U.S. Navy, and of
Oh,
course they have the Missouri attitude, right? Oh yeah, yeah, I understand your system's great, blah blah blah. But go,
show me.
right? So we had to take one of our systems down to Johnsville, Pennsylvania, and install it on what was then known as a P3 Orion, which was a
DC-6?
it's no, it's a P3 Orion. It kind of looks like a DC, and it has four turboprops, but it's about the size of an MD-80 or DC-9,
Yeah.
and you had to put it in and then go on test flights and then go through official demonstrations, which was really interesting because I'm thinking, are they going to put a submarine out off the coast of New Jersey? I'm thinking, nah, they did.
They
So they
did.
put a submarine. They put a submarine out there for us to find, and it was really quite interesting because you think you've had some commercial flights with some rough pilots. you get a Navy
Well,
pilot.
explain the South Pole, North Pole magnetism and the
Oh, okay.
deviation in the
Yeah.
magnetic
Well,
field. That's how you
the
find
whole
them.
idea is, well, first of all, you say, well, okay, I want to find a submarine.
Yeah.
Well, some people may think, okay, well, I better get a big scuba and a good pair of goggles and swim a lot and hope I find it. That doesn't make sense. But what really happens with the way the system works is you're in a metal object looking for a metal object. Now, that metal object, when you look at the Earth's magnetic field, North Pole to South Pole, uh, ends up with an anomaly. That's why they call it magnetic anomaly detection system. So you get a discontinuity in the Earth's magnetic field, which indicates there's something metal that's interfering with the Earth's magnetic field normal flow. So what you have to do is detect that little blip, and it's almost like, imagine like if you're in the hospital and you're on a heart monitor and you hear blip, 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 you hear nothing, and then you hear blip, and you go ah, or you hear blip, 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 then you just passed a submarine going 250 miles an hour, right, in your airplane. So then you get an idea, you come back and look for the signal again and verify the exact location of the submarine. But the trick is you're in a metal object, and what you have to do is make that metal object look like a wooden airplane with glue, no nails or anything, so it's magnetically neutral. And what you
But you
do is you
haven't.
go up
Yeah.
and you go up in the airplane at around 10,000 feet,
Yeah.
and you do pitches like this, and you do yaws and rolls, and then you do a 1G turn and go on to the next cardinal heading. Now, why are you doing it? You're collecting. Now, this is the real amazing engineering part. And the guy who headed up this program was a professor that taught me at Loyola. And that's how I got the
Oh,
job at CAE. So what you're doing is you're collecting all this data and you're using it in real time to solve 16 equations with 16 unknowns
hmm.
in real time. And once you get the parameters for solving these equations, you can generate equal and opposite magnetic fields to cancel out the magnetic properties of the airplane and make it neutral. Now, what was interesting,
That's physics, isn't it? I mean, that's not
oh, well,
that's not algebra.
it's physics and it's complicated, uh, complicated combinations, um, because not only are you collecting all this data, you make sure the data you're collecting from the detector head can be related to each other and how to treat it. Like that detector head needs to have an idea of what cardinal heading you're on, so it knows what to do with this data versus the next cardinal heading versus the next. I mean, the complexity level is way up there. Um,
No pun intended.
and, yeah, no pun intended. Now, what's
But
interesting is,
I go ahead.
well, that was considered a crude system because we're generating equal and opposite magnetic field to the airplane's magnetic field. What they did later on is they didn't bother doing that. They took the dirty signal from the detector head, brought it in to the computer system, and mathematically subtracted it to filter out the noise.
All right.
So you didn't have you had a detector head and a separate set of coil to generate your neutralizing magnetic fields. You didn't need to generate anything because you're going to subtract it mathematically, which was
Do we have aircraft up there? Sorry, I'm sorry, Eric. Do we have aircraft up there now doing this every day? Or are
they still
submarines
have
still
them.
that
Yeah,
much? We have
they
nuclear
still have them.
submarines out.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, they still have them because submarines these days. I haven't followed it, but I have followed ballsy enough to know submarines are more deadly
Mhm.
than they've ever been. Now I think I saw an article 2 days ago where they launched a new submarine,
Out of
totally
Groton?
nuclear powered. Huh?
Out of Groton,
Sorry.
Connecticut. I think it was out of
Yeah,
Groton,
it was out of
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Yeah.
And one of the highlights in the story was that next time it needs to be refueled is 33 years from now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
So
guess
you can
I
imagine
need
if,
constant. I need constant refueling, even though I can hold my breath underwater. I need constant refueling.
yeah, but you can
Golly.
imagine how that thing could disappear, right? If you have enough fuel for 33 years, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways, so now what was interesting, the fellow that my professor, his name was Chimtamani Adkar. He was an
Gesundheit.
Indian fellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing about Joe, we used to call him Joe, right? You know, Chimtamani doesn't quite roll off the tongue. Um, he he had one really interesting quirk. When he didn't want to answer a question, he would simply sit there in his chair, and his legs would go like this. Yeah, and it was so funny because
That's called a
you
physical
know,
manifestation of angst.
yeah,
Um,
but it was
you know, we're
just so
talking about
weird.
we were talking
Yeah,
about submarines and
yeah,
military and everything.
yeah,
That was an interesting part of your life, but you moved on
yeah.
to the Ma Bell. I worked for Ma Bell
Ma
for a year.
Bell.
Worst year of my life. My grandfather worked for Bell. He was a pioneer.
Oh
My
yeah,
stepmother worked for Ma Bell, and I couldn't stand it. I mean, they put me in an accounting department. My father took me out of lifeguarding and said, "You're going to work for Ma Bell." I went,
yeah,
blah, because for a woman, it was supposed to be a really great thing to do, and it wasn't me. I couldn't sit at a desk. I used to go into the bathroom and do chin-ups, just to get rid of some energy. I was terrible. I was horrible. I was just horrible. If I
yeah,
hadn't quit, they'd have fired me definitely. But
yeah,
I stayed there 365 days because I told my father I'd stay a year. But
yeah,
he wasn't with Bell. Um,
yeah.
anyway, speaking of fathers, as we were going to, and submarines, we're going to talk a little bit about the military. If my father was having a conversation with your father right now, given the American problems and pain we're going through on every side, we're all in pain, how do you think the conversation would go? Your father, World War II, my father, Navy, World War II, your father, 3 years, 9 months after being captured in Hong Kong, 3 years, 9 months in a Japanese prisoner of war camp.
Yeah.
My father on a ship in the North Sea.
You know,
What would they say to each other?
they would be gobsmacked. I really don't think they could imagine this and anymore could be happening right now. Um, you know, I think that he would feel that, you know, I went through all this and, you know, the world still hasn't learned. Um, um, you know, if he was alone with your father, he'd probably share his experiences because he didn't share a lot with us.
My father didn't either. Just before he died, he
Yeah,
patted the bed beside him. We thought he was going to die then, but he lived another few years because he was always making comebacks. He patted the bed and
yeah,
he said, "Come here, Heather, sit down." And I sat on the bed and he said, "I
yeah,
want to tell you something. I
yeah,
told you and Alan, my brother, how
yeah.
much fun I had in the Navy, but I don't want to leave you with that opinion.
Right.
War was hell." And then
Absolutely.
he told me a couple of the things he had witnessed. Um,
Hmm.
and he said, "I
Yeah,
never told you that when you were growing up. I didn't want you to be afraid. But the world out there, before I go, I want you to know that the world can be like this." So
yeah,
and your father and my father would have shared that, but my father was not a prisoner of war. But they both
yeah.
fought fascism they put their lives in jeopardy.
Oh, absolutely. And my father would probably, if they were alone, he would have shared some of the things. He mentioned it not in a lot of detail, but um, the night they were captured, which was Christmas Day, 1941.
God bless.
Uh, apparently, the Japanese soldiers took machetes to 70 troops, British and Canadian, and just butchered them. And he also mentioned, people would be executed for, misbehaving, beheaded and things like that. So, but then again, and he mentioned certain things about certain cruelties that he'd witnessed. Um, but other than that, what was really interesting, he was tough as nails. He was the youngest of a family of 8 that grew up on a farm out in Goshen Corner outside of Sussex, New Brunswick. So he was the low man on the totem pole. So you can imagine all the great jobs he was assigned by,
Yeah.
his siblings. And his mother was killed in an accident where a car hit a buggy, um, around midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night. And so he grew up the youngest kid without a mother, and he was really tough. But was interesting the fact that he got through the prison camp. He did have signs of malaria when that my mother noticed when I was really young, but there was never any discussion, any evidence of any sort of PTSD. He he kept, like your dad, he kept a lot of things to himself in terms of all the detail and the ugliness of the war, but he never showed that it broke him. And and it was really funny. It was quite endearing the way he'd interact with me. When it got to the point where I was taller than him, he was about 5'4" and that, he'd always say, yeah, this is just to maintain the power. He said, you know
Yeah.
what? You may be taller than I am, but you're never going to be as big as I am.
Yeah. There was
And that,
there
that
was
was,
power in that generation. There's a reason why it's
oh
called the
yeah,
greatest generation because
yeah,
we both tried to live up to it in every way we could. But I look back at
yeah,
my dad, and he was so jovial and so full of energy, and he had so
yeah,
much availability to Alan and I as far as
yeah.
what do you want to
Oh yeah,
do? I'll teach you this, I'll teach you that, I'll take you here, I'll take you there. I mean, you're going to
yeah,
learn how to water ski. Don't ever say. And he used to say, "There's no such word as can't."
right,
And
right.
I mean, when I grew up and moved away, I thought, "There's such a word as can't." I just can't say it out loud.
Yeah,
And he taught me and my brother how to consistently. We were never comfortable. We always had to try harder, try
yeah,
harder. And my brother ended his own
yeah.
life, but I don't
Oh
blame my
no,
dad. I don't blame my dad for that. It's just that
right.
sometimes you don't know how to turn that off and be a frumpy mid 70-year-old lady sitting on a couch with.
Balance it. Yeah, yeah,
You have to learn how to balance that. And I had when I moved to the states, I was I don't know. I was expecting my first child, so I think I was 28 or 27,
yeah,
and I moved to Chicago, and that was the first time I'd been away for periods of time, not living 11 miles from dad or something. So I
yeah.
really, the top was off and sky was the limit, and I didn't have to be Edwardian anymore. I could actually go for it,
Yeah, yeah,
go for it, and also forgive myself for not being everything. And you went all
yeah.
the way, and you took engineering for God's sakes. I'm an artist and writer. I mean, what does that tell you? I went the softer route, and yet,
Well, you know what? We're all wired differently. You asked me
yeah,
to write something for you.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'll write you a
I did
program.
it to you.
Yeah,
You take
but
me out behind the barn and beat me.
yeah, we used to get the belt. I don't think that was a bad thing. Dad used to say, "This'll hurt me more than it hurts you." Of course, he was lying, but he never really hurt me. I used to cry when my brother got the belt. I'd cry when Alan got the belt. Oh my God, it
You
hurt
ever
me to
get
have my brother.
you ever get the strap in school?
No, um, it was put on the desk once, and Mr. Russell left
Uh-huh.
and said, "I'm going to send Mrs. Wheatley in here to do this." Well, they had this
Mm,
little thing. Mrs. Wheatley came in, looked at the strap, and said, "Well, I see, Mr. Russell has already taken care of business, so back to class," which means they knew they weren't going to give it to me, but they left with the impression that I got it. My brother got it 3 times on each hand from Mr. Russell, and his hand swelled up double. I mean, they didn't fool around, but you didn't
I
do
got
that
thrown
again.
out in the hall one time and I had a great idea. I hid in one of the lockers. Now, if you're out in the hallway and you get the strap, you're going to get pain level 1. If you're out in the hallway in a locker and they find you, pain level 3.
And they'd always do it with the office door open so you could hear the strap. Oh my God. Mrs. Wheatley, I don't know, she was our vice principal at one point, and she'd walk very heavily,
Yeah,
and she'd
yeah,
march down the hall. She had these, I
yeah.
would shake when I heard her coming down the hall. I was so afraid of
Oh,
her.
yeah.
Getting back to our dads and fascism and why they fought and
Yeah.
served their country, and we're both living in the States now, so I have received tremendous number of informational videos from you from a fellow
Oh,
in Denmark, and
right.
he's either getting another PhD or something like that in Denmark, whatever he's doing there at the university.
He's he's a professor at the University of Southern Denmark, and he's also affiliated with Johns Hopkins. And
Oh,
I found out that the reason why he's in southern Denmark is apparently he was making some statements, political statements, which were not favorable to some people. And he got this anonymous message saying, "We know where your kids go to school, and sort of watch it." So he took that as a blatant threat, packed up, and went to Denmark because, as you know by seeing his videos, he's really trying to help us understand through all the distractions of our history and what the real history and motivations were, and how it basically has enabled our situation right now. It talks quickly, so you mentioned sometimes you have 4 cups of coffee in the morning. That's probably just the right speed to be going at to keep up with him. The guy is brilliant.
oh,
The guy is
totally.
brilliant, and he's eloquent in the way he describes things, and builds out his his theory and his storyline. Um, I've shared that with a number of other people, and everybody's been really fascinated with his work.
Would you be able to talk to me right now about that last video you sent me when I was talking about the overtaking of the overthrowing of a government and how, and then I finished that by saying any government that's been overthrown has been taken over by an incompetent group. But what are we going to do to get out of this situation? Because
Well, yeah, was that the one about where we're talking about the parallels between Trump is always right and Mussolini right?
no, but we'll talk about that one too. No, I think it was talking about how violence solves
Yeah,
nothing and how violence is sometimes even in slavery, but violence really solves nothing. It makes a point, but it just leaves a
yeah, it's to
scar.
reinforce. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
scar. It's meant to intimidate. It's meant to signal that there's no way you're going to change things. We're in control. You have no power, um, and don't even bother trying to resist. Um, and and there's a lot of history about that with the in Germany in the 1930s and Italy, because both Italy and Germany they had their secret police and go around and intimidate people, and or groups or eliminate groups that were viewed as perceived as threatening to their cause. I don't want to make the word cause, but they had their agenda, I should say.
That's a good word for it.
Uh, Yeah, and what they and of course it's the idea of controlling everything, much like we see a lot of the government, like education and that being shut down. The idea is get in control, have a few trust or your go-to people, and then surround yourself with other people that will support everything and anything you say that can be used as to say, well, my expert in this, fully supports my translated, this idiot I hired, who basically is my useful idiot, right, is there to support me in everything I say and do. And it adds justification to whatever they are doing. Um, so it's, yeah, yeah,
I remember the word propaganda when I was growing up, and I thought it was a word of the past. Um,
yes.
and it's certainly not. It's reared its ugly head in
Well,
Fox News and other stations that are telling big porcupines, big fibs.
there was,
And
there was a red light that I saw in my mind during my naturalization, ceremony when they talked, the part of it is to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And like I had a little bit of a brain flash, and I'm thinking, what's with this domestic nonsense? And it just goes to show you how naive I was back in 1989. That's when it happened, when I became a
well, I've been
citizen.
I've been
Um,
naive all my life, and every day is a new reality slap across the face for me, because I am a
right,
firm believer that there's 99% good in everybody and maybe 1% bad. And
right.
what we're going through now is bringing out the worst in good people.
Well, where I live right now, I'm in the Bible Belt, and over the last several years, it's been very interesting to see how people's opinions and personalities and interactions have changed. Um, I have seen people that their whole personality has changed. Otherwise, I think they feel empowered by what's going on in the country, and that they can say and do anything they want. Um,
Because a certain person
I
and his
have
regime
people
backs
that will
them.
argue that,
Oh,
exactly. Well, he's permission to be as ugly as they want to be, and they don't have to be uh, teal, uh, and be social and stay within the perceived social norms. The boundaries where it can accommodate a lot of toxic thoughts and speech. Um, I've had some people who honestly believe in like Alex Jones, and the whole chemtrails thing, right? Where the government's putting chemicals in the jet fuel, and what you see when a jet goes by in the sky is really
it's
chemical bombardment.
you know what
And,
it really is.
and
I
Alex is water vapor. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So
right.
what's Alex
Yeah,
Jones
see, I've got
saying about this
kidneys.
now?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
kidneys.
I've got kidneys. I could figure that
I
out.
remember that joke.
But
How did you know this was your wrist, your elbow, and your shoulder? Kidneys. I
yeah,
love that joke. Where did we grow up?
and
Oh,
the saddest part is people believing that it also makes the frogs gay.
the
Have you
French
seen
people?
Alex Jones?
The French people? As
No,
I
no,
am from Quebec, I'm allowed to say that, and you're married Miss
no,
Boissonneau, we're allowed to say that. No,
no,
it
no.
makes the frogs gay?
This is part of his nonsense. He says, "Oh,
You
and
know,
it makes the frogs gay." Oh my God,
oh, really?
not
Where are those
as
tadpoles
if
coming from?
as if
You know,
yeah, as if that's worse than you're being chemically bombarded. Oh, can't have those gay frogs around.
you
Anyway,
know what's really funny? Anything that is being spewed out by the the far, far, far right
yeah,
Christian bloc.
yeah.
Now, I I am not a Christian, and I
Mhm.
lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma for 5 years, where
Oh,
and I had metaphysics taught at my house every Wednesday night. We
yeah,
and so many people who were my neighbors would see the people walking into my house, and I had a clinic in my house, and people of every race, color, and creed who were professional athletes or training for the Olympics would come to my clinic because I
yeah,
dealt with elite athletes most of the time.
Yeah.
And my neighbor came over at one point and said, I can't believe you let," and she named a race with a very vile terminology, "into your home.
Mhm.
It says in the
Yeah.
Bible they'll never see the kingdom of heaven because there's a veil over their eyes." And I freaked out. And I called the woman who taught metaphysics at my house and I said, "Now listen to this, Eric. This is where I found out what a hypocrite I am." I said, "I
Yeah.
can't stand those fundamentalist Christians
Yeah.
who this is what happened." And so my friend said, "Heather, listen to yourself. We're all on different rungs of the evolutionary ladder. Your neighbor
Yeah.
doesn't like that race. You don't like
Yeah.
what she preaches. You're not
Yeah.
different. Don't judge." And I was rightly told off because it can happen so quickly that you form an opinion that's negative against a group and you generalize. There's so
Mhm.
much good in that neighbor. There's so much I loved about her that was
Yeah.
great. And that one thing could have colored my entire conversation with her for the rest of our existence together. But it
Yeah.
didn't because I was slapped across the face. I'm just the
Yeah.
same. And
Yeah.
um, and now I've met so many Christians who really walk the walk instead of just talking the talk.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I'm certainly fine and dandy and love them, but the ones who are now, I had a woman on my in my clinic recently, 2 master's degrees, and she said that Trump was put on earth by God to save the world. And she said,
Yeah.
my husband wants to break up with me if I talk like this at home, but he's so wrong because he doesn't know the reality of this is Christ back on earth. Don't you know that, Heather? And I mean, I had nothing to say because I think we're all Christ on earth. All people with goodness in them, no matter race, color, creed. We're all the best part. We've all got that within us to have goodness in us. So I say, well, if that's what you think of him, fine, but he's not the only one. If he is, we all are. But
Yeah.
that blew me away, and she was so into that I could actually feel fear from
Well,
the people who say that.
she's not the only one. There's millions of them out there. Um, and what's really interesting is the way, um, religion really gets manipulated uh, as part of a facade to support an initiative. Because many people are basically blind when it comes to a lot of religious topics. They believe that's it. There's no way you're going to convince them. And if you associate your agenda with their belief and use their belief against them, um,
Or to get their
it's a way of
attention.
turning them. You get their support. I
It's
don't know if
mad.
you're
It's manipulation.
absolutely, but it's subtle because it's delivered in the context of what they believe in. It reinforces their belief, but then puts this appendage on it, which includes your agenda,
Yeah.
and try to meld the two together. There was you ever watched the whole series House of Cards?
Yes,
And
several times.
there was a
Several times.
scene, there was a scene that was really eye-opening where uh, a family lost their son or daughter, and they were raising an issue that was causing political waves in DC. And Kevin Spacey and another guy went out to their home and spoke to them in their language. They were deeply
But wait,
religious.
it was the peach. It was the peach water tower, and the girl hit a guardrail when she was texting her boyfriend that she's going under the peach. What do you think it looks like?
Yeah.
Is that the one?
I don't remember the details. All I remember is
In
after
Gaffney.
that after that scene, they walk out of the house and Kevin Spacey looks at the guy that was with him and he says, "That's how it's done."
I
Like,
remember
look
that.
at me, master manipulator. That
But
really
that tells
stuck
you a
with me.
lot. But those people
Yeah,
in that church, I loved the people he was talking with because they were the good they were good
yeah,
Christians. They were
absolutely.
the parents of the girl who died when she was looking at the peach,
Yeah,
that water tower.
yeah,
She was texting her boyfriend that what she thought the peach water tower looked like. And then
mhm,
this a presidential candidate at that time, or vice president or something, or where he was the president, when he went in and manipulated them, you hit it on the head, Eric, because
Yeah,
he went to these good people and used their faith to forgive him for what he had made
exactly.
happen. He had,
Right.
oh
Yeah.
God, that's so true. And I
And it's
love that series.
Yeah, it's really funny. There's certain things that's the second one I mentioned, where there's certain things you see and it stays with you. There was that. There was during the naturalization one, foreign and domestic. That was a little alarm went off then. Didn't do anything about it, and I sort of figured, oh, that's weird, you know.
Yep.
But it's signals, and next one I get, I'm going to pay a lot more attention to.
Yeah. Well, when I was naturalized, um,
Yeah.
it was at Middlebury College, and they put us at the final test. And I wrote a story about it
Yeah.
after because it was,
Mhm.
to me, I took vows very seriously. Vows to this country, and I still love this country very, very much. It's been so, so good to me.
Yeah. It's changed my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my. As much as I love being a Canadian because I'm polite and because I carry that culture with me, this
Yeah.
country is just wonderful to me. So I got two countries to love. But when I was being naturalized, I looked at the other people who were being sworn into this country with me, and there were Pakistani people wearing flip flops with socks on. There was
Yeah.
a Russian man, very
Mhm.
old, very thin, black eyes, a rugged skin. And I looked
Yeah.
at these people, and they didn't want to leave their countries. They had
No.
to leave their countries. I was able to cross the border because I got married and I'm a writer. I can do that anywhere, and I got an okay, you can come in. And
Yeah.
and I looked at these other people, and they're just here giving up their own culture, their own citizenship from where they were raised, their ancestors, so that their children can have a better life here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and now I see them, people coming from other countries because they are suffering where they're from,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
their
Yeah.
lives are in danger where they're from. They're coming here. A lot of the Hispanic people I know who came come here because I was a farm worker myself, so I have a great affinity and understand what they're going through at 80, 70-hour weeks for $150. They get more than that
Yeah.
now.
It's
And
backbreaking. Yeah.
yeah, I know I did it,
Yeah.
and I look at them and I'm thinking, you can't get an American to do their job, but they're doing it. It took
Yeah.
5 months for my farmer boss to find someone to take my place because no American would take that job.
Mhm.
And this is when my children were young.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I look at that, and they're sending all their money home. The most unselfish people I've ever met. They are paying taxes. They are not taking advantage of us. They're here legitimately. They're
Yeah.
not, but nobody respects them from
Well,
the people
and
who
the
are trying.
shame of it all, and the shame of it all, they're there under persecution, and um, their presence here was as a result of the government's agenda, which has now decided to change course. And instead of criticizing the immigrant, they should be criticizing themselves for having let the immigration system degrade the way it is and
Yeah,
cause the problem. They've enabled it.
yeah,
And the politics of it, a lot of Republicans have businesses. They talk about how bad it is, but they can't hire enough immigrants fast enough because they'll pay less. And one of them is Mr. T. himself, you
Mr.
know,
Who?
Mr.
I
T.
really,
Yeah, Donald
yes,
Trump
and his wife
just
didn't come in.
submitted. There was a story where he submitted requests for I don't know 100 visas for hotel workers for to bring people in to work in his hotels.
Now your mother was Irish. Your father was mostly Scotch,
Yeah, my father.
Scottish,
Well, yeah,
Scottish.
Scotch, but he was. I think he was. Yeah, he would describe himself as a mongrel.
Yeah, I
He's
am
got a
too.
little bit of everything in him, and
Uh,
which is good.
it's
Which
very
is
good.
good. You're healthier. Yeah, you're
You
healthier.
know,
It's when
you
you're
know,
when you're part of a tree without many branches, you end up with a problem. Yeah.
Speaking of our genetic code, and once again, your wonderful dad,
Yeah.
when he was released from the Japanese prison camp after 3 years and 9 months of suffering and
Yep.
witnessing horrors,
Yeah. Yeah.
he came through Vancouver and
Yeah. Yeah.
he met somebody there.
Yes. Well, not there, but
And
actually, by the time he got back to Montreal, and what's interesting, my wife has found the manifests on both the ship that took him to Hong Kong and the ship that took him from Japan back to Canada. And
which
it's
ship
really
was it? Do
weird
you
when you
remember
go
the
into.
name of the ship? My father was
I
on a
don't
million
remember
ships.
off the top of my head, but we have records.
Yeah, my dad
Yeah.
wasn't in the
So
Pacific Theater, but you know,
yeah.
so
So, anyways, yeah.
good for Kath to
So
do that.
so as it turns out, my father had met somebody who was escaping from an abusive marriage, and I guess after 3 years, 9 months in the Japanese prison camp, I guess he figured he needed to build some relationships, and he met this woman, and they ended up having a girl. They tried to make it work out over a period of about 6 to 8 months, and she was put up for adoption. And all during my life, my mother would always say, "Oh, you don't know what I know." And and I never just drove me nuts. I was always saying, "Tell me, woman," And but anyways, you know, shortly around the time my dad died, he mentioned, "Oh, Eric, you have a sister," and I'm thinking, "Whoa, whoa." And of course, I had no idea how to find it. And thankfully for technology and for my wife, she suggested I put my DNA into Ancestry. And as it turns out, um, my sister had spent years trying to track history, and paper history hard to follow compared to how tracking history on the internet with all the different services available is much easier now. So she put her DNA in as well, and then we got this match. And she started sending me messages, but by that time I stopped looking. And after about 6 months, my wife said, "Hey, go back in and check, see what's what." And there was a series of messages. And the first one was, "Oh, my name is, I am sure we're related. I put my DNA in. I want nothing. I just want to understand my family history, blah, blah, blah." And then it went down. There was a couple of other messages. And by the time I got to the last one, it was sort of, "Well, if you don't want to talk to me," she figured I was just blowing it off. So
Oh,
I
because
had
you hadn't
connected.
checked.
I hadn't checked. And I guess maybe that extra delay there was really, um, testing her resilience to just keep pursuing, finding out who family is. So yeah, it turns out she was 5 years older than I am, French Canadian, fluently bilingual. Used to live in Montreal, Laval area, and now in Sherbrooke. She used to work at Bell Canada, and I also worked at Bell Canada, which
It's
was
genetic. It's genetic. My grandfather, my stepmother, and me. Oh, go ahead.
yeah.
Anyway, tell me more.
And
You met
and
her.
I often wonder, did I ever pass her walking around on De la Gossetière or
Beaver Hall
Sherbrooke
Hill.
or Catherine Street or Dorchester or René Lévesque, because there's no way I would have ever done that. There was no way I would be looking for somebody I didn't know existed, right? Um, so, talked that this all happened. We found, the DNA match came up, and the first conversations happened during COVID, and then finally got around last October. I got on the airplane and went up to Montreal and drove out to Sherbrooke. And what is that when I got to the gate here at RDU to get on the plane, there was a couple who obviously were bringing their adopted little girl home. And I was sitting there looking around, and what happened was I looked around, I'm thinking, holy mackerel, here's this family's life sort of opening up in front of me. And through all the years, I racked up like 2.8 million frequent flyer miles with all my travels in business. How many times have I been sitting in airports and being totally oblivious to seeing people's lives changing right there if I had only looked up instead of worrying about how to make my numbers or how to solve this technical problem or something, right? So that happened there. And on the airplane, I ran into a couple of the people who had adoption in their family history. I went to the rental car counter at Pierre at Trudeau in airport in Montreal. The guy who served me, his father was adopted. I took my niece out to dinner and to a restaurant out in the Ville Salle area, and the young woman who served us was adopted by a French Canadian couple. I think she was from Vietnam. I mean, everywhere you ever see that you ever see that movie Fools Fall in Love with um, Selma Hayek?
No, but I could
No.
relate because
Uh,
I've several times in my life been a fool in love.
yeah. Well,
You
anyways,
know,
the thing I wanted to mention was everywhere he goes, people say there are signs. You just got to pay attention to them. There are signs. It's a really cute movie. Who's
well,
the
I
other guy
totally
there?
believe that.
Yeah. Trying to think. Matthew Perry was in it as
Oh,
well. The guy
really?
who overdosed, right?
He just, yeah, in a hot tub. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe in the signs. I believe in all that totally.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
my my world is full of miracles. Yours is too. I mean, I've looked at your medical report. For God's sakes, I can't believe you're still alive.
I'm
But
surprised I'm still walking. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm surprised any of us are still alive. And I was thinking the other day, I make little videos for Facebook and grateful videos or videos that will try and encourage people to love one another because it's a very tough time and we can't lose sight of the fact that even though there are differences of opinions inside every single person, there's that element of good that if you concentrate on it, they'll know you're looking at the good and then
We need a lot of them.
they will return it. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm going to tell you a bit about my association with Raleigh. RDU is Raleigh Durham Airport. And when I was flying, we'd land at Raleigh and we'd go to the hotel.
Yeah.
And we got to the hotel one night and it was absolutely filled. I was the only white person there and everybody was
Yeah.
dressed in elegant clothing and we were going up in the elevator and I said, "Excuse me, but what's going on? Is there a wedding?" And they said, "No,
Yeah.
this is the homecoming for Shaw. It's out on Martin Luther King
Oh yeah.
Boulevard. We were the
Yeah.
first place to ever have a sit-in for civil rights,
Yeah.
and this is our homecoming." And I said,
Yeah.
"Wow, you guys are all so beautiful." And
Yeah.
I wrote a story about it, and there in the I went back down to the lobby for something, and there was a man standing there in the lobby, and he was standing there all the time, not talking to anyone. I said, "Excuse me, sir, are you okay?" And he said, "I'm a taxi driver, and a woman just got out of my car, um, and it was, and he described her, and she looked a lot like me. I think that's. Oh, he came up to me and said, "Oh, you're not the person I thought you were," and
Yeah.
he said, "She owes me for my fare." And
Yeah.
I said, "Oh my gosh!" And he said, "It's been half an hour. I'm waiting for her. She's supposed to come back and pay me. It's a big fare." I went, he's just been used, and he
Yeah.
thought it was me, a white
Oh,
woman, blonde hair.
yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, "I'm so sorry. My dad drove taxi after World War II." And and he told me that these things happen. And
Yeah.
so we stood there and we waited together. I just kept talking to him. And I watched all these beautiful people in their gowns and their tuxedos and everything. And the next day I went running because I used to run 2 or 3 hours every day. I was a distance runner. I used to ultra runner.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
every time, and they were having the parade, the homecoming parade, and I kept getting pulled into people's driveways. Here, have some barbecue, girl, have some barbecue. And these are all, I was the only white person, and they were pulling
Yeah.
me in driveway. And of course, I'd say, "Sure, okay, I'm running." And, "Oh, sure." And
Yeah.
we had a blast. And every time I'd turn a corner, I'd come again to that parade. For hours, the parade kept going, and I kept meeting them again. But I was
Yeah.
having a good time. And then I
Yeah.
stopped. Parade was finished, and I stopped at a red light, and there was a man standing beside me, obviously a street person. And he looked at me, and I said, "Where are you going?" And he said, well, I'm just going there. And I said, what's there? And I looked across this road, and he said, well, that's where I get my free lunch. I
Hmm.
went, oh, okay. I'll come with you. So we walked across the street, and I went up, and it was table after table after table after table serving lunch, giving a drink, a bag of food, and it was all
Yeah.
so you could carry it. And I got to the end, and
Package. Yeah.
I said, all I felt since I've been in Raleigh is love. Who are you people? And so the woman, she was white, and she said, well, we're the brown bag lunch people of Raleigh. And
Yeah.
she said, what are you doing in Raleigh? I said, well, I'm with JetBlue. And she said, well, my husband works for JetBlue. And she
Hmm.
told me his name. I said, oh, he works in corporate real estate. His last name's Green. I know him. And
Yeah.
we talked, and I said, wow, this is just amazing. And so she told me about the love that people in Raleigh have universally for one another. So I wrote this story and called Raleigh my spiritual Mecca.
Okay.
And you say it's in the
Yeah.
Bible Belt, but
Yeah.
like I say, if you walk the walk, you've got my complete applause. As a
Yeah.
non-Christian, I saw in Raleigh an example of
Mhm.
purely good people.
Oh, there are. There are. There's and I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh. I sense a large degree of hypocrisy. And
Well, you'll
that
find that. You'll find that.
in that it's manipulated to gain social favors within certain organizations.
I've
Yeah.
always said that. I've always seen that from Greenfield Park all the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
my dad was agnostic, but we went to St.
Yeah.
Paul's, and then you know what happened at St. Paul's. So we won't go there now. But um, bad, 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 bad things at St. Paul's that happened to so many children, and
Yeah.
I escaped
Yeah.
that. But I mean, it didn't affect me. I didn't even know anything was going on. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it added to my resentment of people who affiliated themselves with churches and called themselves good people. And
Yeah.
it's a
Exactly.
balance, Eric. It's a
Yeah.
balance because I've seen both
Yeah.
sides. And although I don't join, I have great respect for the ones who are out there doing good. And one of the
Yes.
first places I saw that en masse in my adult life was in Raleigh. And of course, there are going
Yeah.
to be hypocrites within that organization. There are going to be people who are serving lunches to make themselves feel good.
Everywhere. Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
I'll just
everywhere.
say, don't give up, Eric. You're in a
Oh
good
no.
place. You're in a good place.
There. Yeah. There is. It's just. Well, the I think the thing that is most concerning is, which apparently is all legal, is the redistricting.
Oh,
Um, in North Carolina,
gerrymandering.
they did a complete redistricting. And if you take a look at the North Carolina map now, it is red, totally red, with one little blue spot.
Where's the blue
And
spot?
um, I think it's in the central part of North Carolina, but
Up
it
in Asheville,
was
maybe?
no, right around here. Like we're sort of
Oh,
central North Carolina.
oh yeah.
Um, but it was even so aggressive that the person who did hold a district, right, has to move to keep his district because they moved his house into another district. So he has to move and live in a certain district to run again. After catching up with you so recently, I'm kind of fascinated with all the different things that you're doing. So we definitely need to catch up because it was interesting when I was going to Sherbrooke. One of the things I was looking for was, hey, is there a BD&B or a place I could stay just inside, the
U.S.
U.S. Drive up to
Airbnb.
Sherbrooke instead, and it's really funny. And then I we reconnect after all these years, and it's just funny, the pieces sort of
Well,
falling into place.
You and Kathy come to visit me anytime in Newport. Newport's a great, great place. There's a lot to
Yeah,
do. We're on Lake Memphremagog, which is 32 mile, well, some people say 32, I do, a mile long lake between
yeah,
Newport and Magog, and
yeah,
close enough to
yeah,
Sherbrooke that you'll have a good time. We're going to close off the show, Eric, but I want to say
yeah.
to sum it up, it's great to see you. It's great to know that you're holding
Enjoyed it.
firm in the
Oh
image
yeah.
of your father as a
Yeah.
anti-fascist, and that you've had a wonderful life, raised two wonderful children. Oh, nice cup! Let's say it all. Greenfield Park was a great place to grow up on the south shore of Montreal. I was born in
Yeah.
Westmount, but when I was 6 days old, they moved me out of there to Greenfield
Yeah.
Park, and I'm thrilled about that because we grew up in a very protected, magical, healthy place. I had my kids
Yeah.
there for 2 years of to get to know my culture, and I will
Yeah.
say, Eric, we benefited greatly by the wisdom and strength of our fathers.
When you look at our where we started from, things have been pretty damn good.
Yeah,
I
all of us.
feel quite grateful.
I'm grateful. Anyway, we're going to show this on the Royal George page. We're going to show this on the Greenfield Park page, and
Okay. Yeah.
wherever else our show is shown by Kelby. Um, I'll just close
It'd
off the
be
show
great
now,
if
Eric,
it
with a great
great.
big gratitude to
Yeah.
you.
It'd be great if we make some more connections and catch up with things.
Well, Jimmy Davis has that thing in Ontario all the time, but I don't drive, so
Yeah.
I fall asleep at the wheel
Yeah.
at 12 miles, so I don't go anywhere. But
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you,
Okay.
Eric. It won't be the
Thank
last
you
time we
very
meet.
much.
I'd love to meet Kathy and your
Yes.
children. And
Yeah.
if you've been watching Life is Good for the last hour, love each other, okay, folks? We're different. Even when things aren't like this in the country, one on one, we're different. Individually, we're different. And we've got to be thankful for that. But if we can come together and find a common denominator, which is we are all American from different parts of the world ancestrally, then we have to build on that and love each other and respect each other and quit, just get rid of the people who are doing negative things like ICE. ICE, big bad no no. Love you all, and thanks for watching Life is Good. See you next week. Thanks,
We're
Eric.
really gonna rock tonight.